Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaścana. Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu yogam tam vidhi pandava nahya sannyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaścana. Please recite after me. Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu
Yam
sannyāsamiti prahuhu
yogam tam vidhi pandava
yogam tam vidhi pandava
nahya sannyasta sankalpo yogi bhavati kaścana. Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu
Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu
yogam tam vidhi pandava
yogam tam vidhi pandava
nahya sannyasta sankalpo
nahya sannyasta sankalpo
yogi bhavati kaścana.
yogi bhavati kaścana.
Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu
Yam sannyāsamiti prahuhu
yogam tam vidhi pandava
yogam tam vidhi pandava
nahya sannyasta sankalpo
nahya sannyasta sankalpo
yogi bhavati kaścana.
yogi bhavati kaścana.
Word for word meaning and translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yam. What? Sannyasam. Renunciation. Iti. Thus. Prahuhu. They say. Yogam. Linking with the Supreme. Tam. That. Vidhi. You must know. Pandava. O son of Pandu. Na. Never. He. Certainly. Asanyasta. Without giving up. Sankalpaha. Desire for self-satisfaction. Yogi. A mystic transcendentalist. Bhavati. Becomes. Kaścana. Anyone. Translation. What is called renunciation?
What is called?
You should know to be the same as yoga.
You should
be the same as yoga.
Or linking oneself with the Supreme.
Or linking oneself with the Supreme.
O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi
One can never become a yogi
unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification.
unless
unless he
he
renounces the desire for sense gratification.
So here, what does it mean to be renounced? So one aspect of renunciation is understanding that having material desires means moving in the wrong direction. But just knowing that you're moving in the wrong direction, although that is a good start, is not sufficient. So the first thing is to recognize that you're moving in the wrong direction. So once you know that you're moving in the wrong direction, what will you do? You will stop. If you've understood that this is not good for you, you will stop moving in that direction. But is it sufficient to stop moving in that direction? It's not. Because you have to reorient yourself and move in the direction towards the Supreme Lord. So simply understanding that material desires are not good for you and stopping the chase of material desires is not sufficient. So something has to replace that. Because we've discovered that we cannot be desireless. All of us have to have desires. So simply saying that I want to give up my material desires and you think that is the end objective, that is wrong. That is what is coming from this shloka. So what is the Lord saying? Unless you are united with me, you are really not renounced. Yes, you may have renounced your material desires and you may have stopped chasing them. But stopping that movement in that direction is not sufficient because your goal is now in a different direction. So you have to turn around and move towards the Supreme Lord. That is the objective. And He's the object of our love. So that is one aspect that we need to understand. Simply giving up material desires does not mean that you're united with the Supreme Lord. You have to approach Him to be united. To be in yoga with the Supreme Lord means that you have a connection with Him. And if you have a connection with Him, it means you're acting on that connection. That means you're moving in His direction. So that's the first thing to understand. In the last chapter in Shloka 4, we came across two words, Yukta Vairagya and Falgu Vairagya. Historically, apparently, there is a river running in Gaya that is underground. That river is called Falgu. But apparently, if you dig a little deep, you will find the waters of that river. So what does Falgu Vairagya mean? Falgu Vairagya means that you reject everything as material. You don't want this laptop because that's Maya. You don't want the phone because that's Maya. You don't want any wealth because that's Maya. You are afraid that by utilizing these things, you are going to become trapped in Maya. So Falgu Vairagya is a shallow rejection of material things. So the opposite of that, the Lord talks about in Shloka 4 of the previous chapter, is actually Yukta Vairagya. So what is Yukta Vairagya? Yukta Vairagya means you see, oh, this laptop is an energy of the Lord. This mobile phone is an energy of the Lord. This Lakshmi is an energy of the Lord. I should use all of this energy of the Lord in His service. So this is Yukta Vairagya, which means you're not artificially rejecting things because they could trap you in Maya. Rather, you use the things that the Lord has given you back in His service. That is Yukta Vairagya. That is what the Lord wants you to do. Not this false sense of renunciation. So, some of the individuals, when they get so frustrated with material things, they artificially reject things and then they go into a monastery. But when they go into a monastery and living a monk's life, They realize that this life is so austere. And eventually they get disillusioned even with monastic life. And beneath the surface, like that Falgu river, if you scratch a little bit, that material desire is still there. So we have to be careful. What does renunciation really mean? It's not an artificial rejection of things. So here the Lord is saying, unless you are connected with me, externally you may have rejected things, but that doesn't mean you are a transcendentalist. So changing your clothes does not mean you're a transcendentalist. That's just an external factor. So here the Lord is saying, the way the Lord is defining yoga is linking oneself with the Supreme. Then that is renunciation. And the Lord is talking about the exact opposite in the second half of the sentence. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So what is it that we have to give up? We have to give up the desire to chase things and substitute it with the desire to chase the Supreme Lord. That is true renunciation. Yes? So this is the essence of today's shloka. And very interesting shloka, where the Lord is categorically saying that if you don't have a relationship with Him, you can do whatever else you want, but you are not renounced. So sannyasi means it's an internal thing. Internally, you have renounced everything that has nothing to do with the Supreme Lord. In reality, there is not nothing that has to do with the Supreme Lord. Everything has to do with the Supreme Lord. So how can you reject anything? So that's the deeper understanding, that artificially rejecting things does not take you towards the divine.